This is a talk that I gave at Wired headquarters. They have something very similar to this called the Quantify Self. It's a bunch of Silicon Valley geeks who just measure everything about themselves, and I mean everything. There were some really strange presentations that night. So I was in town and I said, well, how about if I do the quantified patient? And they said, go for it. So here we are. My first byword in every presentation I do, it's from the very first time I spoke publicly after my own illness, is patient is not a third-person word. When I go to policy meetings, what I keep hearing people do is talk about patients as if they're somebody who's not in the room. And that leads to thinking errors, because believe me, when it's your butt that is in that hospital bed, or your mother or whatever, you start to care differently. I do not accept it when people say, well, we're all patients. Well, wrong. Okay? I blog on epatients.net. That clip art looking doctor up there is actually Tom Ferguson, the founder of epatients.net. Massive visionary. Back in the 70s and 80s, there was this hippie thing called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was called, subtitled Access to Tools. He was the medical editor. And when the internet came along, he foresaw that access to information was going to change the nature of healthcare. He said that e-patients are equipped, engaged, empowered, and enabled. People ask, how did you get into this, Dave? Well, I say, well, it's like they asked JFK, how did you become a war hero? He said it was easy. They sank my boat. 3 years ago, last month, I went to see my doctor. I was an engaged e-patient before I knew the term existed. I'd been away for a few years, so I sent the guy. I didn't want to, get through our short appointment and say, oh crap, I forgot this stuff. So I sent him an email in advance with 12 items I wanted to go over. One of them was this thing. So, yeah, I mean, how's this for the quantified patient? I'd had this odd symptom going on where this little boomerang-shaped thing was showing up in my field of vision. So rather than trying to describe it during my meeting, I went out and Googled it. I found a picture of it, and I sent it to him so he could see it, and I sent him the link, and I sent him a little science class sort of grid of the episodes that I'd recorded, so that when we were together, we could be productive. Another item in there was I said, I've got a sore shoulder. And I don't want to wait 3 months for your damn referrals, so hook me up now, and then when you see me, if I don't need the referral, we'll cancel it. Okay, they can give it to somebody else. Well, so I went in, and the next morning, they called and said, your shoulder's going to be fine, but there's something in your lung. And what that shadow is, it was a golf ball-sized tumor in my lung that, totally by coincidence, showed up in my shoulder x-ray. And so he said, we don't know what it is, but I said, so I got to get back in there, right? And he said, yes. So we went in, and they did a CAT scan, and this is what showed up. So that's a slice through my lungs. That's not supposed to be there, right? And it turns out, he had said maybe this is just some odd fungal thing, in which case it'd just be that one. But there were actually 5 of these spread through both lungs. And he said that means it's pretty sure that it's cancer, but we don't know what kind because it doesn't look like lung cancer. So I went in for more tests. It led to the question, where's this from, right? Which conveniently abbreviates to WTF. Pretty much, remember, near-death experiences are really serious and you should never laugh about them, right? But I vividly recall that 7 o'clock that January morning, I went in for an ultrasound, and this is what we found. That dark splotch there in the kidney, turns out that's one of 2 tumors. One was sticking out the front of the kidney and was attached to the bowel. One was sticking out the back and was attached to a big muscle called the psoas muscle. They were both attached but had not dug in yet. It's almost certain that that shoulder x-ray saved my life because it was really aggressive. When they finally graded it, they did the biopsy. They found that it was grade 4, the most aggressive type. So I went out and researched my condition, right? I've been online since 1989, back when CompuServe charged a different hourly rate depending on how fast your modem was. Right? So, I mean, if I shop for pizza, I'm certainly going to shop for what the hell's going on here. Especially since, for years, I've specialized in finding solutions to unsolvable problems. So I go to WebMD, and what do I find? The prognosis is poor. Almost all patients are incurable. Now, I didn't like that answer. And so I Googled more, and on another website I found the outlook is bleak. On another website I found prognosis is grim. Okay? And it started to sink in. No matter where I looked, I was screwed. The treatment that I eventually got, high dosage interleukin, this happens to be the standard picture of stage 4 kidney cancer from their website. There's that thing in my lung. Down there in the femur, turns out, I didn't know it for 6 weeks until the leg started hurting, but I had a big fat one in my femur also. The leg eventually broke. And in addition to these, and there was one in my skull too. It's like a textbook, right? Beyond that, there were these other lesions. In fact, 2 weeks before my treatment started, one erupted from my tongue. I actually had kidney cancer growing out of my tongue. I was very, very glad I'd gotten that x-ray. And that, you know, in a sense, that was being an engaged patient because I had taken action to get hooked up with a doctor I really liked at a major academic medical center, and I told him I don't want to wait 3 months for your damn referral. Right? All of that added up. So, what I read was median survival time 24 weeks. And that was 3 years ago this week. You're left with the question, right? What are my options? All right, I know my odds are bad. I also knew enough about statistics to know that median survival 24 weeks doesn't mean you're dead in 24 weeks. It does not mean they gave me 24 weeks to live. I might be the 1 in a million who beats the odds. So what are my options? What can I do? Get engaged, get it in gear, do everything you can. This is why I say your time will come. So, on the day that the diagnosis was certain, my doctor gave me a prescription slip and he wrote on it ACOR.org, which is this network of listservs of cancer patients. Beautiful example of the fact that it's not the platform, it's the people in a community. Because this is the crummiest, low-tech, they don't even do HTML emails with attachments. Why? Because every time the ACOR list managers talk about upgrading the technology, they hear about the patients at the low end of the socioeconomic stratum who can't get at broadband. Right? So this is what they do. But this turned out to be the best source of up-to-the-minute information about kidney cancer on the internet. Better than any encyclopedia-style website. Why? Well, there are whole separate hour-long talks we can do about this, but physicians have a bazillion things that they have to pursue, and patients in a condition like mine have one thing that they can go deep on, and on top of that, most physicians, even specialists, even oncologists, don't yet know about clinical trials that are in process. But if you are in the process of dying, those clinical trials might save your life. So, next activity. My patient portal at my hospital, patient site, I gave the password to family and friends who know more about this stuff than I do. For me, reading these radiology reports it gave me a sense that I didn't have to just sit back at home and be a victim, right? But still, I didn't understand some of the stuff. At one point, I wrote a note to my oncologist and said, what about this? It looks like this tumor grew 30%. It turns out I misunderstood the word craniocaudate. Right, which has to do with which axis they're reading the dimensions in, X, Y, and Z. But on the other hand, in my journal that I started, I also at one point said, well, I don't know what to make of this. It says in the radiology report, visualized portions of the bowel are grossly unremarkable. But, me being me, of course, measuring everything, I actually started a grid of the dimensions of the tumors on my CAT scan, because I wanted to track the progress. I mean, what the hell, when I was 13 years old, I stayed home from school during the World Series and made a box score with pencil and ruler and everything. I've been measuring stuff since way back when. So they have this measure they use where they take the dimensions and multiply them and divide by 100, so I did that. And after the first round of treatment, the score had dropped from 38 to 31. Now that was not drastic, but it sure was good news considering the direction that things had been going. During a lethal threat, the chance to be engaged is a huge mood booster. And to the extent that your mood influences your immune system, and there is evidence for that now, there's a field, psychoneuroimmunology, that documents this, that's a good thing to do.